Tweedledee, tweedledee,
Tweedledee. We're live.
tweedledee,
We're live. We're live. We're live. And yes, it is Memorial Day. And no, this is not a replay. And yes, we were
are
going to take
live.
off. And yes, we are here. So now that we've got that out of the way, we'll be back in a moment.
Good morning. My name is Brian McNeill.
And I am Lisa Santiago McNeill.
And thank you for joining us on our show, Let's Talk About It. We come to each Monday through Friday right here on the SIBN network, on iHeartRadio, YouTube, TuneIn, as well as Facebook Live. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Like. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. And of course, like. We know some of you are surprised to see us because we did say that we were not going to be here today. But to be quite honest, we missed you.
Shines on.
We missed you. We missed you. And this morning, we both had a waking thought. And as I was thinking about all of the amazing, good morning, Brittany, new authors that are coming out this May, June, and July, I also began to think about those who may not yet understand the importance of their story. The world thrives, every single culture, on stories.
Every single culture thrives on stories. Our communication is based upon the story. History is on the narrative, which means it's based upon who chose to tell the story.
Absolutely.
That's all. And how that person, and so much of history is skewed by the story being told by someone who wanted it to look that way.
And even the word skewed is a subjective term, because as I evaluate some stories, there are some opportunities that many people don't have, but to hear, you've heard the phrase, two sides of the story, right? So to hear two sides of the story, and then there are some people who say, well, there can only be one truth. And the truth of the matter is, the truth is based upon your perspective, your understanding, and your experience. So if there are three people having the same experience from three different perspectives, then each one of their perspectives is truth.
The classic movie Vantage Point with Forrest Whitaker and Zoe Saldana in the movie. 6 different perspectives of the same incident. And they all were true.
And which perspective is more important?
That's right.
Which perspective is more important? Here's something that may or may not have ever happened to someone else. But if you're really, really honest, you can have a completely different perspective from someone else about a same incident and they not be a liar.
Yeah. Different ways of looking at it, like we always play the game, like if I hold something in my hand, okay, now, right now, what's in my hand? Now, from your perspective, the camera's perspective, you can't tell what's in my hand, okay, but you saw me pick up this card, okay, but from my vantage point, I can see it clearly. So it all depends on where you're standing at the time that you hear that story. For example, when I grew up, we grew up in elementary school, they taught us like Christopher Columbus was a hero, okay, he discovered America, even though there was Indians there. He discovered America and he taught those savages how to eat corn, stuff like that, right? But as an adult, I learned the other side of the story, how he was a loathsome being, and how he basically, genocide, whole races of people. So stories, but a history book told the story one way at the time.
And this is less about the stories that are in the history books, but more about your story, your history and how that shapes. So we actually began this morning with a question about Memorial Day. And oftentimes people don't understand the difference between the two, between Memorial Day and Veterans Day.
I actually challenged my wife. I said, baby, do you know the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day? And she did, and she was able to answer it more succinctly than I would have. And I know the difference. She did a great job answering the questions. Boom, boom. And then she was like, how dare you think I wouldn't know the difference? Good morning, Miss Phyllis. How you doing?
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Miss
Miss
Phyllis.
Brittany. Good morning, Miss Vivian.
But those stories that uh, get to hold people in esteem even after they're gone, those stories that get to inspire people for decades, for centuries, forever, those are stories that deserve to be told. There are entire relationships with God that are based upon the understanding of stories that were written in the Bible.
The difference. Do you want to tell Miss Brittany?
Sure. The difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day in its simplest form is Memorial Day is the day set aside to honor those who gave their lives in service and are no longer here. Veterans Day is to honor those who gave their lives in service who are still here.
Memorial Day, we're remembering someone gone because of battle.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, happy Memorial Day can be oxymoronic, but we could find happy thoughts about it too.
And so, how are you using your story to shape both your life and the lives of others?
You know, when you first brought it up, I was thinking, because this is Monday, we always talk about the weekend. What did we do on the weekend on Monday? What did you do on the weekend for Monday? And I thought we was going to tell the memory created, the stories that we created this weekend. In the back of our home, we had guests over. So we had a good time with guests and we created memory, created stories to tell. We could tell about how much fun, grown folks fun we had. Nobody jumping around, no one trying to holler at anybody. We just sit out back, listening to Alexa, jamming, telling stories to each other, people telling different stories, laughing with each other. It was just a great, great grown folks time.
And that's one way that stories are used. Stories are used to create community. Another way that stories are used are to communicate a thought.
What's up, Ron? How you doing?
Stories communicate a thought. Stories can also create a movement. The stories that we're hearing now in so much of our news as it relates to Black Lives Matter, these stories are bringing a human perspective to a very horrific life experience. But the stories, the bringing the humanity to Breonna Taylor, the bringing the humanity.
Your boss told you can get ahead if you start dressing more sexier. Me too. Okay, you felt that you had to put out in order to get the job. Me too. That movement began as a very successful movement, but the stories being shared.
And your story can galvanize action. Stories are used to sell merchandise. We were looking, Brian and I were watching consistently, kept on coming up. We actually got to the point where we started muting it. The Airbnb stories. The stories that are communicating you renting from Airbnb was that you could then create this type of story for yourself. Your child's first steps happening on vacation, your family getting together on around the dinner table, happening on vacation, you having the opportunity to experience a new country, a new culture. They're showing you the stories. The stories are so important in helping someone else to see possibilities. That's the other thing that stories do. Stories help to persuade us to believe in something that we may not otherwise see as a possibility.
Brittany, I am so glad. Brittany says this is a good show. First time I'm able to watch and contribute in a minute because I'm usually always in the car, but today I'm off. I'm glad that you're off, and I'm glad that you're in the car, and I'm glad that you can, not in the car, and I'm glad that you can contribute today because, one of the things about stories, do you remember some of your favorite stories? And why was that story one of your favorite? The stories that were told to you. Maybe it was a bedtime story. Maybe it was a story that you heard in school or so. Maybe it was Curious George or The Cat in the Hat or Green Eggs and Ham. These stories that shape us. Do you have a favorite, Miss Vivian? Do you have a favorite story, Miss Phyllis? Do you have stories that you like to tell or like to be here told, Brittany?
Stories also give us hope. The stories, the powerful stories of overcoming, give us hope.
And useful fiction, like Lisa was just talking about. Stories can use to inspire and educate us and shape us. Yes.
There was in our class on Thursday, in our empowerment publishing class, there was a question asked: who has inspired you, and in the different areas, because we're looking to model ourselves after those that inspire us. And one of the inspirations, Brittany's inspiration, was Stephen Hawking's and Helen Keller, because they did not allow their circumstances to predict or dictate what their contribution to the world would be.
Both people are amazing stories. How could Helen Keller move the world? How could she inspire the whole freaking world? Blind, deaf, and dumb.
Well, not dumb. She was mute, obviously. Yes. But she was.
That was another way of putting it.
I know, but we don't use that anymore.
Okay. Blind, deaf, and mute. But even still, she was able to influence the world. And some of her quotes, if you Google Helen Keller quotes, are lasting quotes. They endure. They inspire people.
But what really inspired or allowed that inspiration to continue is the telling of her story. If we didn't hear the story, if we didn't hear the background, if we didn't hear what she went through, if we didn't see or read or know anything about those experiences, then we might not believe that they are even possible.
Someone needed to tell that tale.
That was Brittany. Brittany, the author of I'm Living My Blessed Life with Cerebral Palsy and Don't Let the Wheelchair Fool You, which will be out in July, late July. That was her inspiration. And another one that I thought was particularly notable was Monica Allison, who is the author of The Ice Cream Man Is Coming, that is currently available. And her two inspirations were Mr. Rogers and LeVar Burton.
Wow.
She personally wanted to model after them, to help children to read, to learn, but understand that both of their mentors were storytellers.
Yes.
Both of their mentors also had their stories told. We get to tell our story from our perspective. Mr. Rogers was amazing, not only at telling stories in a way that could captivate audiences, but he also leveraged those stories to raise funds to keep those things going on.
Mr. Rogers, his storytelling, his integrity, his heart, his soul, his love for humanity, everything he did poured out that he really loved children. Okay. His mission was that he loved children, and he was able to convey that in a motivational way, in an inspirational way, So, and that's why that's why he became an icon. The reading rainbow, LeVar Burton.
Mm-hmm. Telling stories, the importance of telling those stories. Your story is so important. Vivian's mentors, Star Waters, Sandy Rogers, Lizzie B. Gold. She was projecting these amazing individuals who had changed the world by using their voice vis-a-vis telling their stories.
Brittany says, yes, my favorite story is my story with 2 exclamation points. To be honest, the more I tell it, the better I feel. But besides that, Helen Keller story. Yes. And that's an interesting thing. The more you tell your story, the more you even like yourself more. That's beautiful. I love it. Tell your story more and more. The story of Acres of Diamonds. Russell Conwell told that story about the African farmer finding diamonds and all that kind of stuff. But he told that one story over and over and over again at business conferences all across America, raising money. And he used the money he raised from telling that story to found Temple University in Philadelphia. He founded a college based upon the money he earned by telling one story.
Telling stories is powerful. Mm-hmm. Telling stories is powerful. Whether you tell your story through song or paintings or writings.
We should be telling our story more and more through lives and social media. I've seen a few videos lately. What would happen if you did a live once a day, for a week, see what happened with your business? Just do a 2 or 3 minute live. What would happen? You would get a following because you're telling your story. What would happen to Brittany's business if she started doing more live, telling her stories?
Well, she does. She just doesn't do them on Facebook anymore. She does them on that fan base platform.
Okay. And I don't know enough about platforms to determine which one is first, second, or third, or even better or worse. But still, just telling it, you're going to get a following wherever you are. Wherever you are.
Absolutely. Good morning, Demona. Good morning. Good morning.
So, Demona, good morning to you, Demona. So, how would you describe the story of your Saturday night in my home's backyard, our home's backyard? It was so funny to me because Demona was there, and she's always fun. Demona's always, we enjoy you very much, Demona. But Demona was cold. She was cold, and she was very cold, and Lisa was not cold at all. Okay, Lisa had on like a skirt and had her shoulders out, and was sitting in the same area that Demona was. Demona was freezing, and I had a jacket on, but my jacket was not zipped up or anything like that. And some of the people were cold out there, but some of the people were not. Like Santiago wasn't cold, and Dr. Deborah wasn't that cold, was she? But anyway, it was only 61. It was 61 degrees. It was 61 degrees, and you guys act like I was freezing. 61.
She acted like she was freezing. She was freezing, and that was her experience.
Why was she freezing?
Does it matter?
Yes, it does. I'm saying she was freezing because she had got it in her head that she was going to be freezing.
You don't know that.
Well, I have examples.
Okay. See, she's anemic, so her blood levels her iron levels are lower, so she experiences temperatures differently than you. Again, that's her truth.
I didn't know.
That's the same reason why
all that stuff I said.
Right. That's the same reason why my sister Deborah can be freezing in 78 degrees.
Oh my Lord, she's gotta have it hot.
She's anemic. She's anemic.
I did not know Deborah was anemic.
Yes.
I didn't know any of that stuff. Chicks don't be telling me their stories.
Oh my goodness. Tell your story or be frozen. But telling your story is empowering, right? It is empowering because a lot of times if you cannot articulate to the level of helping someone to understand, then they might not have the right levels of empathy or response to your situation. That's why being able to tell a compelling story can be a matter of life and death.
Oh my gosh. Not only telling a compelling story can be a matter of life and death. How many times have you heard stories about the doctor didn't really tell us what we really needed to know? Because the doctor didn't communicate. Some of this is communication skills. The doctor didn't communicate the severity well enough, and the family had an adverse consequence because of that. I had one of those recently. Someone told me that story. That if that doctor had told them the real, they could have made different decisions, but he didn't. And now they lost a loved one behind that. That's a horrible story to have to tell, but that's their story now.
And that's why it's so important to learn how to effectively tell your story, because I believe every one of our stories, every one of our experiences, both positive and or negative, have lessons in them that we are supposed to glean from. And sometimes not just us, but sometimes those lessons are for someone else. I was watching a story where an individual had experienced some severe brain swelling. They could no longer speak and they could no longer articulate in it. All of their scans came across flat, as if they were not responsive. They were not responsive at all. If they had not been in the room, so to quote unquote, if they had not been in the room, meaning they were on the scan, when a phone call came in for one of the techs that was watching their monitors, the tech was on the phone and the person on the phone was playing music. Now, all the time that their scans were being run, there was absolutely no response until this phone with the music then was heard through their machine and they responded.
Yep. I love that story. It reminded me of another one. I'm glad you had a great time, and it was much needed. Demona, we had a great time with you, and it was needed by us as well. Mel, you guys of a certain age, y'all grew up watching Warner Brothers cartoons, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, those kind of things. That's Warner Brothers. And one of the guys who did most of the voices early on was a guy named Mel Blanc. He did Yosemite Sam's and Foghorn Leghorn, and Bugs Bunny was his major character. Yeah, what's up, Doc? He did those voices. Mel Blanc got into a terrible car accident, and he was put into a coma. And he had been in a coma for weeks, not responsive at all. And they was trying all kinds of stuff to get a response from him. They didn't know what they was going to do with him, but he was in a coma. And one of the doctors happened to come in there one day just to check on him, picked up his chart and says, "So how's Bugs Bunny doing today?" And Mel Blanc responded in Bugs Bunny's voice, "Yeah, Bugs not doing so good. Yeah, not doing so good." And he was waiting for someone to speak to Bugs Bunny. And that led to him recovering, speaking to Bugs Bunny, and while he was in a coma. I always thought that was an interesting story.
It is, but in sharing that story, now there may be someone else who is dealing with a loved one in a similar situation who could tap into that knowledge and see how it might apply to something that they are going through or that their loved one is going through. And so by sharing our stories, we could inspire someone else to do something differently, something out of the norm, something that they might not have been compelled to do. Good morning, Jahan. Thank you for joining us this morning, and happy today, Bill. I just want you to understand that these stories, every single one of them, is important. There are some stories.
And your story is important. And your story is not finished yet either. Well, you got a lot of stories that you've done that contribute to your life. But, like the expression in children's books, and they lived happily ever after. What that means is that story is not yet finished. They got more to tell. What's up, Bill? How you doing, man?
And your story may be just the inspiration or direction. See, sometimes stories compel inspiration. They will bring about an energy that makes someone feel, oh, wow, I can do that too. Or yes, that's interesting and maybe I could. But sometimes your story can trigger a new thought that will lead you to writing of the next piece of that story.
Yes, so stories matter. Today's topic, again, first off, her name is Lisa Santiago McNeill.
And he is Brian K. McNeill. And I want to respond to this comment. I know where you're going. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. John said, I want to do it more, but I don't want people to think it's about money. It's about God. It can be about both. First of all, I need you to understand that it can be about God and it can be about money, and it can be good. It can be both. So many of our nonprofit organizations think that they should be doing a social service just out of the kindness of their hearts. And while that is a wonderful, emotional, and compelling thing to do, it cannot be sustained.
That's the problem.
And if it cannot be sustained, then just as soon as they begin to solve a social problem, heal a social ill, they will have to close down because they can't continue it. So we get to understand that you can do things for both God and purpose and money, and that people will understand that they get value for value. So please don't allow the thought that it could be misconstrued, because I can tell you a story about misconstruction. And to be quite honest, there are so many great things that we could or should be doing, but because we have allowed some misinformation to direct us inappropriately, we're not going forth with the very thing that we were intended to bring forth. So if God placed it in you, let him bring it out of you.
All we got to do now is pass the plate. That's it. Pass it. That was a good point, baby. I appreciate that very much. But the show is called Let's Talk About It. And we come to you Monday through Friday. And we've been doing this since 2016, since October of 2016. Monday through Friday, the show called Let's Talk About It. We talk about personal conversations here.
Business information here.
And spiritual inspiration.
That's a little bit of shenanigans thrown in.
And that's what we talk about. And we do have together, we make it what's called the Empowerment Duo.
Yes.
And our expressed ministry is
economic independence
through
entrepreneurship.
That's what our belief is. That's what our ministry is about.
Absolutely. And I actually want to share with you the foundational scripture of that ministry for me was Second Kings chapter 4, which is actually about using your gift and being compensated for it.
Yep.
Understand, when the widow went to the prophet and he told her to get many vessels and fill those vessels with oil, he did not then tell her to go give them away. He did not then tell them to go hand them out to everybody who needed them.
So
He
oil.
specifically told her, go sell them, pay your debts, and live ye off of the rest. Understand that there is so much misunderstanding
Sell,
and
pay your
misinformation
debts and live off the rest. What?
of what the word of God tells about the talents. Even in the parable of the talents, it was the ones who did nothing with their talents, meaning that they didn't get paid for them. They didn't even get interest for them. Those were the ones that were the most scolded. They were told to depart from them because they were workers of iniquity. Understand that much of what we have learned about the misuse of our talents is because of misunderstanding and mislearning what the word of God wants us to know about money. Which one do you need? The parable, Second Kings chapter 4, and I believe it's 1-7.
And the parable of the talents is told in 3 books of the Bible.
3 of them.
It's told in the book of Matthew
and Mark,
and in the book of Luke.
Absolutely.
It's the same story, but different
from 3 different perspectives.
Ah.
You got to understand that's how important your story is. That's how important a story is, because Matthew and Mark and Luke all had different perspectives of the same story, but that story was so important that it needed to be included in this narrow compilation. Only 66 books got put together to make the Bible, yet and still they allowed this story to be repeated 3 times.
I haven't thought of it that way before, but you're right. You're right.
That's how important
I want you to get that daggone point.
Please understand that unto all of us has been given skills, gifts, and talents, and the power to get wealth. Please understand, I know that there are many different definitions of wealth, but I promise you at least one of them is money.
I like so much the parallel, how the Bible uses the word talent as a unit of money and also as
an expression of gift.
A gifting.
Mm-hmm.
And today we only use it as what you're good at. I have a talent for singing. But that talent is supposed to yield money. That's what it is.
Absolutely. I would love to help you to tell your story. I'm telling you that by taking individuals and helping them to tap into their story and then showing them how to exchange value for value. There's plenty of messages that tell you not to give away stuff for free, right? Cast not your pearl before swine. Why is that? Because those that are not willing to exchange value in direct proportion from receiving from you may not actually respect what it is that they're getting from you.
Yes, Miss Vivian, misunderstanding. Oh my gosh. This morning is flying by. It's already 9:26, 9:27. You know, we had announced last week that we weren't going to do a show today. We wanted you guys to sleep in, enjoy your Memorial Day. But this morning, my wife woke up with a creative questions on her mind. And I woke up thinking, okay, this is what I can get done this time, da, 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 da. And I realized sitting there, you know what, baby, our energy level is high. Our spirit is high. We need to get on the air. We need to go do a show. So, and if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be able to talk to you this morning.
Absolutely. We would love to stay connected. If you would like to continue to stay connected, if you want to find out about some of the behind the scenes, some of the other activities, and some of the local events that we have, become a part of the Empowerment Circle. It doesn't cost you anything. Just go to bit.ly/empowerment2021. You'll be added to our mailing list. We promise we won't spam you. And if you have something particularly poignant going on that you'd like to share, we will consider adding it to the newsletter so that you can share what you have going on with the Empowerment Circle. Definitely want people to understand that we are helping We So first of all, let me say this. I am first partaker. I had to be healed of the misunderstanding of money. I had to be healed of that. I am grateful that God took me through the journey, which some might consider loss and I consider gain, to bring me to a place from something to nothing and then back up again. Right. So from something to nothing and back up again. When I began to transition to my entrepreneurial journey, I did so with great faith and with great tenacity. I wanted to create an opportunity for people to be able to build their businesses, to get training for what they were needed and missing to succeed, to be able to utilize space, to be able to do all of these things to be great.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Happy birthday, Jai. That's Jahan's son. Today's his birthday. So happy birthday to little Jai.
Happy birthday. Actually, happy birthday. So what happened, I went about this much as Jahan expressed it initially, wanting to just do it of God, just wanting to do it of God, just of God. He had given me the finances. He had given me the ability. He gave me favor in all of these places. And so I'm just going to do it of God. That's it, of God. No concern for how it was going to be sustained. And then I had a dream that one day I was going to go up to the empowerment center and I was going to try to put my key in the door, and all of the people that we had been helping were going to be behind me. And there was an eviction notice on the door, and there was that tape across the door that you could not enter. That was the dream. And I didn't listen to that dream because I actually thought, if God orchestrated this, if God put all of this together, if God is organizing, I don't even know why I'm getting emotional right now. If God is doing all of this, then he wouldn't take it away. Right. So I'm thinking that dream was not true because God had made provision. He had opened doors. He had given me favor with people. He had done so many things. And then the day came that I walked up to the empowerment center and there was a eviction on the door and my key didn't work. And all of the people that were behind me that were trying to come up couldn't get in because we no longer had access.
Now let's look at the story. Because nothing stopped. We still blessed people daily. Nothing stopped.
You got to understand, things did stop. Things stopped and things changed. And I'm not taking away from the fact that things did get better, but I need people to understand that sometimes when you don't respect that one of my elders told me this. She said, you can help everyone that you want. You can bless everyone that you want, but you can bake cakes with everyone that you want. But what she said is, you got to let somebody bring the eggs. You cannot be the one that's providing the flour, that's providing the milk, the sugar, the everything, and everybody else is just coming in and taking. They have got to bring something to make this work. And it was because I did not require it. And even as I'm speaking right now, you could ascribe that as a God complex. Okay. The desire to do everything was a misaligned God complex. You see, God can do everything, but he doesn't. He doesn't do everything. He uses us. He works with us. He does it with us and through us. And that was the same way that I was supposed to be allowing people to build their businesses, to have their events, to get their skills, to get their training, that I was robbing them of their ability to contribute to their own growth and development by not allowing them to sow into their own business.
What a mature concept. So what you're basically saying is that's one reason why you must charge. you must charge for your good works, because if you don't charge people, you are robbing them of the opportunity to sow a seed into their own development. You must charge, and you must charge more.
And see, here's the thing: it's not going to stop you from being a benevolent person. It will actually allow you to be more benevolent, because you can give out of your overflow. You cannot give out of your lack. When you become those that you are trying to support and serve, then you are stifling your ability to help those that cannot help themselves. You are then robbing those that need you by not respecting what it is that you have.
I have a friend that I really I have a love-hate relationship with the guy. A love-dislike. I never hated him. But sometimes I don't like this guy. Okay. He makes great money. And he has this thought in his head that he only want to talk to people unless they make at least six figures. Okay. He don't invite anybody over to his house unless he knows they make at least 100 grand a year and all that kind of stuff. And which I thought was despicable, for you. How dare you think like that? But one of the things he said was, see, people, Brian, who don't learn how to make that money, they can't ever help anybody. What's wrong with you? Because they're not going to have the funds to help anybody. They can't help anybody if they need it. They're not going to be able to give you money if you needed some money. That was his thought, baby. That was his narrative. That was his story. And he felt like even his family and friends that didn't achieve that level, he felt they were less than him. Sometimes
that's an extreme application of that thought, but it is important to believe that you are going to be able to serve better by having the financial ability to serve.
William Brown says, my money has been a sense of nothing to something, to a fear of nothing, to nothing, to a little of something.
That's part of the process. Just like grief has a process, healing from a limiting belief is a process. And sometimes we go through pendulum syndrome throughout that process. Meaning that if we held on to a place and a belief, and I'll use Jahan as an example, but understand this is an unbased example because I do not know him. Now imagine that if he held on to the initial belief that you can't earn any money and still help people and be like God. You can't charge any money. Sometimes we go through a pendulum swing, which then takes us to the further extreme. Now everything has got to cost $1 million. I've met someone recently that went from charging nothing to charging $1,000 a day, right? So this was their knee-jerk response to, I was wrong. This must be right. I was wrong. This must be right. Understand that the truth is usually somewhere in between. And it's also usually going to take a few whacks at getting it wrong before you settle in a place that will both serve you and serve what God has elected for you to do.
It always happens, but it does take time. Sometimes the pendulum stays far left or far right longer than you think. It takes time for that pendulum to swing back,
Bill says, Lisa, you are right. A lot of things stopped, including me. Now I am slowly moving again. Amen. Slowly. Understand that you may be slowly physically moving towards it, but in the process, there were some things psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually that happened sometimes from an undetected perspective. Have a little bit of grace for yourself, a little bit of mercy for yourself, and know that you are moving. You are still moving.
I think a lot of people can't tell if they're moving slowly or not, because they might think they're moving slowly, but just like the seed planted in the ground, a lot of stuff is happening to that seed you can't see until you get a blade of grass. Okay, but there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay.
Well, not only that, we talked about that before, that you may be misjudging your seed. You may think that you are a blade of grass, but you're actually an olive tree.
Or a root. Yeah.
Right? So a blade of grass has 6 weeks and it's above the ground and sometimes burnt out. Or an onion plant, 6 weeks and it's up.
An olive tree takes 100 years to fully grow.
Absolutely. And so that's also why it's so important to share these stories, because there are stories of success that come up and die. But there are stories of success that didn't happen uh, for years and years and years. You do not have to pay to be a part of the Empowerment Circle. You just go to bit.ly/empowerment 2021. We will add you to the email distribution list, and you can be made aware of any activities that go along.
The example Lisa gave about the onion plant and the olive tree, that's coming from the classic book, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. But an onion plant is old in 6 weeks. It's old.
It's old.
Okay. They grow up. But
is it having another onion? It's already going to birth some more onions.
Yes.
Right?
But the plant itself is old unless they get another one. Okay.
Absolutely.
People like that, flashes in the pan, they die early like that. Well, not die early. That's not the right way of putting it. Okay. But they get scorched out early. But bigger trees, stronger trees, oak, olive, they take a long time.
And you know what? I think it's also important to understand that there's a differentiation in those values. That one does not necessarily, its length or longevity does not indicate its valuation.
Right. People eat onions
because they all have different valuations. Now, if you want to work with either one of the Empowerment Duo, if you're interested in finding out how Brian can help you to sell your services better than you could on your own, or if you need some help tapping into just what that is, help identifying what your gift is and what the process is for allowing it to take and make room for you, you can just give us a call. You can reach out to us on our schedules, which are scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You can go to IamLisaSantiago.com/calendar and schedule a brief consultation with me, or you can schedule time with Brian at briankmcneil.com/calendar as well. Either one of us will, within our own individual perspective, be able to at least give back a little bit. And then if you decide that you want to work with us further, that would be great.
That initial talk, that initial consultation is complimentary. It doesn't cost you any money other than the courage to schedule it.
Absolutely. I am rocking my Brittany's beads right now.
You've been playing with them for 2 days.
Absolutely.
I have last night on the couch.
Actually, one of the strands for this set is missing, and I can't find it. This is supposed to be. It's supposed to be 3. It's supposed to say pray, plan, execute. Or dream, plan, execute. I don't know, but I do know, because I give them to my clients. They're a part of the kit that goes out with my manifestation kit that I include with my clients. So I need to get some more, Brittany. I think I'm down to my last.
Jahan, he said, "I love y'all vibe, positive vibes." Jahan, how did you find us?
That's a good question.
How did you discover our show? We're on Monday through Friday, but we've not seen you here before. So how did you find us?
Yeah. And Ms. Vivian, you said, wow. What was your wow moment? So Jahan said, wow. Amen. What was your wow moment this morning? These stories, our stories, the stories that we share of our author stories, of our entrepreneurial stories, we share them because sometimes a story untold can actually twist itself into a lie.
Yep. Just by not, I want to go down that point. But when we first started talking about what we're going to talk about today, you asked me the question, Brian, why do people like stories? And I said, baby, I don't have a great answer. We just do. We like stories. That's the way we communicate, And my brain went to, how do we communicate? Through stories. Okay, go ahead.
Well, our stories allow us to connect. We connect hearts. Our stories also help us to find truth, because there's something about hearing a message and hearing a story that will touch the authentic spaces in us and give us inspiration. When you hear a story that is touching you in a way that just absolutely makes sense, then sometimes it'll nudge that lie that you've been holding on to, about what you couldn't do, about what was impossible for you, about what was you were told that you were too stupid to do, too small to do, too black to do, too Latina to do, all of those things. Hearing a story of someone else's success in that very thing, that you had been listening to that lie for whatever reason, you were hooked on that lie, it nudged it out. And it began to move you to a place of possibility.
That's only one type of story, though. We like all kinds of stories.
All kinds of stories.
But stories even have bad endings, you know.
Well, I like stories of overcoming. And that's really the only types of stories that I produce.
But mankind, we want to hear the story about how jacked up that is, about that accident. We want to hear the story about everything. Story. Tell me the story. What happened? Okay. The game last night, the score was 27-31. What happened? Tell me the story. That's what we want to hear. We want the daggone story.
I was overwhelmed with the story of Carmelo Baker, who wrote Please Do Not Treat Me Differently. Mm-hmm. She shared the story of her daughter. This is not in her book. This is a real life story that was being birthed live. Her daughter's, I don't know if it's called physical training or psychological training or whatever they come over to help them. Therapist. It's not a physical therapist. It was a behavioral therapist. I don't know. But her daughter's therapist, her daughter has a disability and she doesn't communicate verbally at this particular time. And more to the point, they just hadn't figured out how to. But the therapist brought over an amazing tool that they were using that was a video with 4 boxes on it. And each box had a different symbol in it. And each symbol had a different meaning in it. Now, this is a child who doesn't communicate verbally, right? And she had been having some seizures, and I don't know exactly what else. But anyway, she taught the child in this session that she could communicate by looking at the right box on the screen. Okay. And so when she looked at the screen to indicate she wanted to play with this particular toy, then the behavioral therapist would give her that toy. If you look at the screen over here, meaning that you want to play with this toy instead of that toy, I will give you that toy. And so the child actually taught her that when I look at that, this is the toy that I want, because she would try to give her a different toy. And she would bat it away. And she would try to give her a different toy and she would bat it away. And she finally gave her the right toy and then she would play with the toy. And I watched that with my grandson. Okay. And he learned that people could communicate even if they didn't know how to talk. And I also believe that he learned patience and empathy in that moment.
You watched that? What are you talking about? The video of?
We watched the video of the baby learning how to communicate.
Okay.
What she wanted without having the ability to use words.
Right.
And it helped him to see that she was smart, that she could communicate, and that what she wanted was important. And I thought that that story was one that was so important to share, because how many children are overlooked or even bullied because they're different?
So many different stories where I'm like surprised at the intelligence of children are rushing through my head. This child knows what they're seeing. They're paying attention. And it surprises me sometimes, Jahan, what I did because I couldn't talk and wanted people to understand me.
Absolutely.
Wow. I forgot. What's that?
Wash hands? I don't know what that means, Vivian. You're going to have to come back and clarify what you are talking about. But Jahan says, what I did because I couldn't talk and I wanted people to understand me. And then the praise hands. Understanding, being understood is a natural human desire. Being understood first, valued second, respected third. Understand that when we get into communication and the person is not following us, is not understanding where we're coming from, that frustration comes. And that
You
frustration,
understand the words that are coming out of my mouth, okay, from that movie. You got to be understood. If we want to be understood, and if we're not
we desire
understood,
to be
it's
understood.
frustrating, just like Lisa just said.
Absolutely.
This,
Even as a baby.
the stand-up comedian, he told a joke about he went to some European country, a French country, and he didn't speak French at all.
Mhm.
And then his friend, some French dudes came over to America, and they came over to him, and it was like speaking in French, asking him something. I don't understand you. He goes, da 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 da, and then he's, I don't understand. He goes, da da so va 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 va, as if he said it slowly, we would understand it. And then he goes, come on, da 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 da. He goes, the French dude was frustrated with him because he didn't speak French, even though he was in America. He thought he was stupid. The French guy made him feel like, you must be dumb. You can't speak this little bit of French.
But we also forget that as we interact with one another, even if we have the same language, we have not had all the same experiences. Mm-hmm. There are lots of things that we take for granted because they were a part of our experiential upbringing that someone else may not have any exposure to. I shared that story maybe last year, of one of my babies who was very advanced and very independent and very mature, and she was one of my church babies, and she was mature beyond her years, and I had hired her to help with my summer camp, and she went out on one of the field trips and came back, and her hair had gotten wet, and she was emotionally overwhelmed. She was emotionally overwhelmed because her hair had gotten wet. She was beside herself because she did not know how to wash and manage her own hair. She was 20 something years old, but she had never, ever, ever done her own hair. As a child, her mother didn't know how to do hair, so she got it done at the salon.
So as now, a teen, because her hair is wet, she's thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to spend this money
and I don't have. So what am I going to do?" And she was a melted down mess. Now, in that moment, I did not have compassion. In that moment, here's why: I couldn't understand that. I have been doing my hair since I was 7 years old. I have been doing other people's hair. I knew millions of people that knew how to do hair. So it's not a secret. People know how to do hair. What in the hell is wrong with the fact that you can't do hair? Here's what I didn't understand. What I didn't understand was that the reason why she never had that experience was because she had some other challenges in her life, some other challenges health-wise, that she wasn't even getting full oxygen to her fingers, that there were some technical dexterity that she didn't have, that there were some things that she just didn't know. And guess what? The fact that she didn't know how to do her hair was not and should not have been a measure of her capabilities. But because I didn't understand those things, I didn't know the story or the backstory, I couldn't possibly offer her the right level of support, or could I?
No, you were inadvertently being an ass because she
inadvertently.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we get to learn from that is if we can be more patient, even when we can't see why patience is even necessary, then we can actually be able to help someone to be able to move to where they deserve to be better than they could have on their own.
Amen. It's 9:52. We're about to get out of here in 3 minutes. We're not going to do the greeting songs today because we ran out of time, but that's okay. This is a bonus show. I'm considering it that. But Miss Vivian, we love you very much. Thank you for visiting us, Brother Jahan. Everyone that took the time to hang out with us today. Absolutely. Those of you chose to speak, and those of you chose not to speak.
Hey, Brittany, Bill, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Miss Phyllis, hey, Damona.
We have no idea who this show was for, but it could have been just for one.
Right, okay. And that would have been enough. Yeah. That would have been enough. We are the Empowerment Duo. I am Lisa Santiago McNeill.
I am Brian Keith McNeill.
And following us at 10 o'clock on the Empowerment Network is Coffee Time with Coach Ja. Get to take it outside, have it on the back porch, and put your feet up for a second. Use your time to both create memories and reflect. Reflect on some of the things that you've already overcome. Reflect on some of the things that you thought were going to take you out, but actually made you stronger.
Take steps towards that thing that you want to become.
Absolutely.
Take steps towards that life that you want to have. You can do that today.
You can do that today. Take it at a little bit of a slower pace. Be intentional with your time and be loving, caring, and nurturing with yourself.
If you give yourself permission to listen to something positive as you're working, I've been getting so much value by listening to these wealthy affirmations every night and every day, whenever I can. They just feed my spirit. I know what they're going to say because they're kind of like running it in a loop, but I can feel it feeling good.
That's a good thing.
It is. And I will say to you, you can get a lot done when your headspace is right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So take some time to spend with those that you love. And don't forget to have sex.